Barry.
Hi, Johan.
Good
It's our
afternoon.
regular once a week meeting. Good to see you.
Yeah, this time over a glass of wine.
Looking forward to it. I've been savoring these 3 bottles of wine. I'm dying to taste them and really looking forward to the next hour with you. You can see I'm sitting out on the terrace. Beautiful day in England. We've got quite a few golfers down on the terrace enjoying the last bit of sun. So all's good this side. On your side, how are things? You surviving all this nonsense?
Yeah, all good, all good. We're hanging in there. Happy to open some wine as well. As you know, we're in a bit of a, sorry, I just started our Facebook attendees in as well. We're in this alcohol ban, so it's quite a treat when you get to open a bottle of wine. So yeah, also looking forward to it. So do you still have people out on the course now?
We do. I mean, they'll be out there till about 9:30. I was in my garden last night to just before 10. So, you know, long summer evenings. It's fantastic. Nice. We're really in the height of summer now. And today we could really see it. We had a lot of golfers that have been here. Actually, a couple out there that have been here since lunch, enjoying the terrace. So, yeah.
Nice.
We're very fortunate that most things are back to normal on this side.
Okay. That's good to hear. So I'm just waiting for everyone to get on board. Hi, David. Hi, Giles, Jackie, Julie, Terry has joined us. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to some of you as well.
Great to hear all our regular supporters, and welcome to Giles. And I imagine Lucy's joining you. I know Emma dropped some wines with you earlier on the week, so I hope you love these wines as much as we do.
All right, Barry, just give me a second while I try to reboot our Facebook viewers. You can just while everybody's signing.
I'll chat to my regular customers. Yeah, just to show you a friendly face that a lot of our regulars all know. Emma's joining me.
Hi everyone.
She couldn't resist coming to taste these wines, so I invited her to join us. And as you all know, she's our wine ambassador at Leonardsley and Mannings, and dealing with all our UK trade. So great to have you here, Emma.
I'm very excited. Been looking forward to tonight, trying these today. Thank you for having me.
Good. Are you winning, Johan?
I think so.
Well, I must tell you, we've done quite a few of these webinars, and we've been pretty fortunate with the technology. We've had 1 or 2 small glitches. Yeah. One rather large glitch when the entire of Zoom went down. So yeah.
Yeah, we've had our fair share of challenges. As you said, the one day Zoom went down on us, and then there's this thing called load shedding in South Africa where they switch our electricity on and off. So we've had some of those in the middle of sessions, but
take it, nothing planned for tonight, John.
Okay, so happy to be joining from hot and sunny Wimbledon. Craig, Camila, Jackie, and Steve, again, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. It's so nice to see regulars back up. So what is a little bit different from the previous ones we've done, what was that, like a month ago we did the last one?
Yeah, good month, 5 weeks back, I think.
Yeah, so it's about time. The only difference this time around is that we've got Zoom and Facebook joining us. So those that are on Zoom, you know, there's a Q&A button. So I think we're a little bit of a smaller crowd tonight. So feel welcome to ask any questions you like, any comments you want to share, please do. Those of you watching on Facebook, same thing. You can comment, ask questions, and it will be popped through to me on Zoom as well. So I'll pick up on those. So both Zoom and Facebook viewers, yeah, please chat along. We've got some really nice wines lined up, or at least I hope so. And so yeah, we'll make it informative. We'll, as I said, we're small enough for you to ask all the questions and comments, and we'll hopefully have a good discussion. Okay, I think we can probably get going with the wines. So as you know, the Vinography wines we're doing this week, the 3 of them. And I thought maybe because it's been 5 weeks and we've got some new people joining us, just to, and for those that are a little bit rusted, let's just to go back again to our very first webinar where we just to set kind of the stage and to share a little bit on where we are, what Benguela Cove is about and what we're dealing with and how the Vinography range fits into all of that. So what you see here is an aerial shot of Benguela Cove, the estate. So everything we do, all our wines is estate certified, meaning that it's grown, made, bottled, everything on the estate. So we're only using grapes coming from this property. The reason being that it is quite a unique spot to have a vineyard. It is quite a unique spot to have a vineyard, and we want to preserve the character that we get from our soils and our climate in our wine. So therefore we don't use grapes from anywhere else. So just to help those that have been here before, back there about an hour and a half drives is Cape Town. Then you come this way, you get Elgin, Grabouw. This road you see down here is the one passing into Hermanus. Hermanus obviously well known for various things, from its whales, its wineries, its restaurants, very famous tourist destination. So if you've been to South Africa, the chances is very good that you've been to Hermanus. But getting back to Benguela Cove, even though this looks fairly flat, it's almost like a bell-shaped, the entire property. So very steep northern slopes this side, southern slopes, a little bit of western and eastern slopes down here. But what really makes it unique, and Barry, you've got much more knowledge of viticulture than I have, and I think you'll agree, is that having 5 different soil types on a small property like this, only being 65 hectares in size, is kind of a freak of nature. And,
Johanna, agreed. What a beautiful, diverse property. I mean, the different slopes, the different soil types, and that amazing close proximity to the sea. You couldn't really ask for much more.
Yeah, so it's a fairly new property for the reason that you've just mentioned, is the proximity to the ocean. No one ever dared planting vineyards this close to the ocean, because there's so many factors that are against you, potential saltburn and wind and seabirds and everything. So being uncharted waters, what they did back, what's it now, 18 years ago, when they planted the first vines, they took a bit of a shotgun approach and planted different grape varietals. Let's use Sauvignon Blanc, which will be our first wine. Sauvignon Blanc on all 4 the slopes across the property, but also across all 5 different soil types on the property. And the same goes for all the other Chardonnay, Cabernet, Merlot, just to see what the interaction is between soil, slope, grape varietal in this environment. So just to help you, and sorry, I've started without properly introducing Barry, but I just took it that most of you know him by now. Barry is the MD at Manning's Eve Golf Club and Wine Estate. So he's our wine guy, heading up our English wine operation there. And I don't see her, but Emma is also there.
I'm here.
There
I'm hiding in the background.
Yes. Emma is also, if you've ever been to Manning's Eve, you probably would have seen her or spoken to her, so our wine ambassador. So the 2 of them are keeping me company. Thanks for joining. Getting back to South African soils. This is just some of the images of the soil types we have. So as I said, quite diverse. This is some shales, and we'll taste some wines coming off these soils. Then really iron-rich soils, we call them coffee stone soils. Some decomposed granite, some chalk soils, which is really unique and kind of bizarre. I know, Barry, that side where you are at, it's quite common, but definitely not back in South Africa.
There's so few properties of those soils in SA. Is that quite a big patch on Benguela, Johan? Or is it just a little corner?
That's I'm guessing it's about a 3-hectare strip running through the property. You know, it's got mostly Shiraz planted on it, and unfortunately not, well, only a small section of Chardonnay. So we would have liked to have more Chardonnay on it, but you know, as it happens, it also, you know, it's our best Shiraz is coming from the chalk. So, you know, it's just what we are set to believe or, you know, think should work doesn't always work the best. So then some quartz stone. These are obviously cleaned up a bit, but beautiful pink quartz, also quite scarce to see them. These are just some of the slopes, just to show you how steep they slope towards the water's edge. And just to give you an idea, this being our lowest, this vineyard you're seeing on the screen is a Syrah vineyard as well. It's our lowest vineyard on the property, and it's 2.7 meters above sea level. So without a doubt, the lowest vineyard in South Africa, and I'm guessing, but pretty sure the world probably, which again, a lot of people, when they talk about high-end wines, they talk about high altitude and how important high altitude is to achieve cool conditions. I'm of the argument the reverse is also valid, in that how low you are above sea level also tells a story, but a totally different story in what you're going to get into the wines as a function of cool climate. Opposite side of the property, just again, some of the slopes running down, and one of the wines we'll be tasting tonight is from this vineyard that you see here. So all of what I've spoken about, soils, all those various slopes, the climate, all of that can be taken together in one word, which is a French word called terroir, which basically sums up all those factors that influence a wine, what we have in the glass eventually. So climate, obviously, be it a hot climate or a cooler climate. Let's use Sauvignon Blanc as an example. If you plant Sauvignon Blanc in a cool climate versus a warmer climate, higher average temperatures, you're going to have two completely different wines. If you take a Sauvignon Blanc vine, sorry about this. If you take a Sauvignon Blanc vine and you stick it in those different soil types I've showed you, all 5 of those soil types, you're going to have 5 completely different wines again. So the soil also has a big influence on what you end up having in the glass. And then the other factor is the slopes. If you take, let's stick with Sauvignon planted on southern, northern, eastern, western slopes, again, just as a function of the slope, those Sauvignon Blancs will all be different. The ones, the northern slopes, this part of the world sees more sunlight because of how the sun passes. The southern slopes are more sheltered from the sun. So again, different temperatures, different microclimates, different wines. And the last one, something that doesn't get spoken about all that often is the people involved, or the tradition that came about over the years, because the guy walking the vines or the winemaker in the cellar, they've also become part of the environment, and they've got their own beliefs and philosophies. So surely they'll also influence what ends up in the glass probably as much as the climate, the soil, the slopes. What we do at Benguela Cove, the people behind it, obviously our vineyard manager, our cellar team, all super important in getting the wines in the glass, but it's not about the winemaker or the viticulturist so much. What we're trying to do is to have a minimal interference in what we do in the winery. It's all about, because we've got the special location, so it's all about showcasing our piece of earth, our land, you know, Benguela Cove. Of course, the wines definitely do have a character and a personality of their own. So our whole winemaking philosophy is based on showcasing this little piece of earth to you in the glass. So therefore we don't alter and change and interfere too much in the cellar with all sorts of fine or fancy winemaking techniques. So having said that, we've got a lot of work, obviously, as a young property and as a fairly new brand. to figure out all these variables we're dealing with. So I've just put up this slide. You know, if you take all these dots, and my job is to connect all these dots. So let's say those dots are the different soil types, the different slopes. Let's stick to Sauvignon Blanc. We've got 6 different clones of Sauvignon Blanc. So that's different, call it variables of Sauvignon Blanc. They're all Sauvignon Blanc, but they're all slightly different from each other. So my job is to figure out and to connect all these dots on what grape varietal works best on which soils, on what slopes, what clone aligns best with what soil types maybe, and with our climate that we have. So it's quite a task, and it's not something you figure out in 10 or 20 or 30 years. It takes many generations and many winemakers over many years to figure it out, but that's part of the fun, you know. So once you start connecting these dots, you know, if you only take 10 dots and you start connecting them, there's already 45 possibilities. Like with winemaking, if you start blending and looking at different patterns and variabilities, you get 3.5 trillion possibilities. So that I think explains winemaking fairly well as well, in that the possibilities are endless. I just took Sauvignon Blanc, for instance, and I took all the clones, the soils, the slopes, the row direction. So some is with the sun's direction, some is across the sun. We can make 340 different Sauvignon Blancs from just the one property, and 360 different Syrahs, and so the possibilities are endless, which is not a bad thing.
You've got your lifetime's work cut out for you there, Johan.
Exactly. So many, it's definitely not a bad thing. Many wineries or properties only have 2 soil types, maybe 2 clones to work with, so they don't have all this diversity. So from a vineyard management point of view, it's a little bit of a nightmare, but from a winemaking point of view, it's an absolute blessing to have all these components to work with, because it just gives, with all those wines being different from each other, it just gives you so much layers and components to work with and to blend with. So last slide on this. Knowledge of the topic helps you to identify those dots. With time and with a little bit of experience, it helps you to connect those dots. But winemaking is also a form of art. So it's not just knowledge and experience. There's also a little bit of creativity and a little bit of art involved, because if you just join the dots, it's not always interesting. So you have to be a little bit creative in the process as well. So talking about being creative, myself.
So yeah, and I look at that picture and I just reminds me of Benguela being called the test tube winery. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, that's why I've got some test tubes on there. Just so yeah, it's you're quite right. We've been not teased, but be it as it may, by fellow winemakers and people in the industry as being the test tube winery, just because we do such or so much weird and wacky things in the winery. Both myself and Michelle love experimenting, pushing the boundaries on what's new, what's happening, what's creative, but not always on just what's new and different, but sometimes, or quite often actually, we go back like 600-700 years back in time and just look, what equipment did they have available? What kind of process did they use back then?
Is your hand frozen there for a second?
And given the equipment there saw some really interesting results as well. So it's being on the forefront of what's new and different, but also going back in time just to learn, you know, what the influence of all these things are. So, and we've often got PhD students doing the research in our winery just because we're open for anything that's new and different. And the reason why I put up the slide is that vinography is actually a spin-off from some of this research and development and trying out new and different things. But it's not only for the sake of trying out and experimenting, it's also, and I guess as important, is to understand our property. You know, only being an 18-year-old vineyard, we've got a lot of catching up and understanding to do of what works best given our conditions, and to then take those learnings and move forward in time. So the test tube winery, yeah, but we don't mind that. Actually, quite often whenever something new gets developed for the wine industry, this Benguela Cove, the cellar, would often be the first one to try out whatever is new and happening out there, which we're obviously happy to do.
Well, we've got lots of experimenting to do here in the UK, Johan. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, whenever we stumble across something new, different, interesting that we like, obviously the idea is to improve year on year on year, that we get better in what we do. So, and we thought, let's share some of those things that we've learned and take people on the journey with us. And so the Vinography range was born. So the Vinography range is whatever was fun, interesting, different in a particular year. We'll bottle it in this label, so it's different from our standard offering, and just share that with our wine club members or people that come to the cellar door, that we can actually tell the full story to. So it's not something that's available to trade or to your general shops. It's from the properties or to our wine club members, those that we can take with us on the journey and actually share what we're doing. I'm talking a lot, Barry, but I'm almost done, so we can get to the wine. I just want to explain maybe the label. So for those that have wondered, the name Vinography, so vino obviously refers to wine, and the graphy is, if you look it up in a dictionary, it's keeping record or documenting something, often documenting research or what is done, and just having a paper trail of that. So instead of me going and writing down everything that we've discovered and learned and keeping document of that in a little booklet, we just keep record of that in the shape of these bottles of wine as a memory of what we've done in that particular year, keeping a memory of it, but obviously also sharing it, because wine is also, or at least for myself, as much as I enjoy making the wine, as much do I enjoy sharing it and talking to you guys about it. So this instrument you see on the label is called a sextant, and it's a marine instrument which was used back in the days, and it's quite a skill to navigate ships. And ourselves being so close to the ocean and being on the supply route back in the days, as the guys discovered the East, and having all the amount of shipwrecks, so it's quite a rich marine and navigation history that we've got with our coastline passing by. We've placed this instrument on the label, and as I said, this was used to navigate. So the sailors used this to establish their current position and to where they want to go. And so for us, this was quite fitting in. It also told our story, like we're here today, but we see ourselves going there, or we're aspiring to get there with our wines, and we use all our techniques and instruments to get us to where we want to go, like the sailors used the sextant to establish and to navigate their way to where they wanted to go. So the one, it's got two lenses. One was focused on the horizon, so right here, right now. The other one that they used to guide them was either the moon or the stars or the sun, whatever was up at that time of day. So it was also a play on, we're here today, we've got this, the horizon, but one should also look up to the stars and the moon and aspire to something, which is exactly what these wines are about. We've got a certain idea and a style and a quality we aspire to, and this is doing and working with this wines is our way of always just fine-tuning and finding our way to our destination. Piece of useless information, Barry, if you've wondered why sailors often have one eye cap on, It's
I've
because
no idea. Why?
during these instruments with the two lenses, so one looks at the horizon, and during the day there was obviously not a moon and stars to look at, so the only thing they could look at was the sun, and the lens burned their eyes, so they will always see eventually their one eye got totally burned and damaged. So that's why the sailors always have one eye clap on. Nothing
Brilliant.
to do with one. Let's carry on.
It's a great story, and I think fantastic packaging. So you guys did a really good job putting that together.
Let's open some wine.
Yeah, Emma and myself are rather thirsty on this side, got to be honest.
So just for those that have these at home, I often see people struggling with these wax closures. The best, you more than welcome to cut them off. What I like to do, or the easiest way to do, is just to go right through the wax with the opener. So just drill it all the way through like you would normally do, and just pull it off like that, and you'll see it kind of breaks off quite clean there. So that's the easiest way, instead of struggling with trying to cut off the wax tops. So
I think the old wax we used to use, Johan, was really a problem. It used to be really brittle and go all over the place and make a big mess. This new wax is really a huge improvement on what we used to have.
They are much better. I fully agree. So you'll have the bottle in front of you. So this is the Sauvignon Blanc we're tasting first. So all of these wines are certified single vineyard, meaning they come from just one particular spot, one soil type, one vineyard block on the farm. It's got the bottle numbers. In this case, it's 673 bottles that was produced. And it's got a little bit of information on the age of the vines and everything on the back as well. So let's taste this 2018 Sauvignon, quite bright, like green color. Tells you a story, as we've previously discussed, winemaking, that oxygen wasn't allowed to get in, so you've still got that nice green tinge to it.
Lovely purity of fruit there, Johan. Stunning.
Yeah, it's quite lemony, almost a little bit spicy and peachy, and it's got this beautiful like pineapple juice lift to it as well.
Has this wine actually seen oak? Because it certainly doesn't come through on the nose at all.
It's been in oak. It's been in. Actually, it's 100% of this wine has been in barrel, and I'll maybe just tell you a little bit about that in a bit. So on the palate, you'll see, in comparison to most other Sauvignons, including some of our, like the Lighthouse or the estate range Sauvignons, quite creamy, very textured, but it's
lovely mouthfeel.
It's still got that signature acidity, almost like a saline, almost like a slightest hint of saltiness on the palate, which is just again true to our terroir and our condition that we have here. So it's got almost the lightest oaky notes, but I know it. But for the normal person, wouldn't really recognize that there's oak on the wine. I mean, I just maybe see it because I know it's been in barrel. But the idea is not for you to really see any oaky notes, because again, we're about showcasing Sauvignon in Benguela Cove and not so much the oak.
Have you used bigger barrels in this, Johan? 500 litre.
Yeah, so it's 500 litre barrels for that exact reason. It's just to better preserve the fruit and the character of the wine. So it's got all these kind of like New World tropical fruit, but the palate is still got that almost mineral restrained Old World feel to it. Let me tell you a little bit about what we've done with this wine. All right. So Sauvignon Blancs, as we've touched on, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, we like picking them with the mechanical harvester while it's nice and cool in the early hours of the morning. We start maybe at 12 o'clock, go on to 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's nice and cool. Sauvignon is quite heat sensitive, oxygen sensitive, so the quicker you can get it off the vines and into the cellar, the better. We press them in a press that is quite reductive, meaning it keeps all the oxygen out. And then Sauvignon Blanc will, if I generalize across the industry and the world, I would think 95% of Sauvignon Blanc are fermented in these stainless steel tanks, which is great for enhancing what Sauvignon offers a lot of, which is nice fruit lift, freshness, and all these vibrant notes. So we do some in stainless, then we also do some in barrel. But then I was, especially for our Sauvignons coming off our southern slopes, which is the side of the property looking towards the ocean. So southern slopes are cooler slopes, but in our case, it's also the side of the property looking right into the ocean. And what we've got like clockwork every day is the sea breeze blowing over the vineyard. So it's cool slopes with the added cooling effect from the ocean winds. So the wines can be very acidic, and we call it austere, it's like racy. It's the best way to describe it is like a wine in a straitjacket, it's all edgy and nervous, and you can't really get close to it within the first 2 or 3 years until those acidities just soften up. So I was looking for ways just to make it, to get a little bit more fruit lift on a younger stage, but also just to give it a little bit more creamy coating feeling on the palate. Otherwise, these wines you have to wait, as I said, 3 years before you can really enjoy them, before they soften up. So I knew the barrel components worked well. They gave a bit of creaminess, but I didn't want to use too big a percentage of barrels, because that would have given us too much oaky flavors that would have masked the Benguela Cove character and the Sauvignon character. So I started playing with alternative vessels like these old terracotta pots, as I previously mentioned, was used centuries ago, ceramic pots or eggs as we call them, just to have the same effect as a barrel, but not have that oak influence into the wine. So why the barrel is different from a stainless steel tank, it's just these dead yeast cells that sits at the bottom of the fermenter once the fermentation is done. The surface of dead yeast cells, or lees as we call it, is much bigger than the ratio in a stainless steel tank, where all of this is wine and there's only a small portion of the wine exposed to these yeast cells. So barrels give you that nice richness. Also played with alternative vessels, which we did incorporate in our estate blend. But the one that really stood out for me was we were not only looking at barrels, but also different type of barrels. Because remember, we were looking to enhance the richness of the wine, but also the fruit lift. So I didn't want to increase the barrel percentage, so I started looking at other types of barrels, and I worked with, and Barry, you will know this, acacia wood barrels that went around a couple of years ago. So it's not French cedar. So I trialed an acacia wood barrel, I don't know, many years ago, and it was just so over the top, so overwhelming, the sweetness and the richness, and it just totally masked the wines. It was interesting, but it was just too much for the wines. But something about that reminded me would potentially work with our Sauvignon Blanc. But I knew 100% acacia wood barrel would be just way too much. So I was thinking of the idea of just fitting the lids or the heads of the barrels with acacia wood. So I contacted a whole lot of coopers. So coopers are the guys that make barrels, and asked them, what is the chance of making me a barrel which all of these staves, call it the body, the majority of the barrel is French oak, and just the heads are fitted with acacia wood. No one was interested, because here's this winemaker in the southern tip of Africa with this bizarre request. Luckily, after many phone calls and begging, and the guy probably saw I was not going to give up on this idea, to get me to shut up, he said, okay, I'll make you some of these barrels. So what you see on the left-hand side is a French oak barrel fitted with acacia heads. So now you've got a much smaller, you still get the benefit from acacia, but it's much more in sync. It's probably 25–30% of the barrel. You can actually see it's a little bit more yellow in color in comparison to something that's all French oak, which is more a lighter cream color. So what we got is all the benefits from the acacia wood, and what it did to this wine, it just gives all this richness, the creaminess, much more than just a normal French oak barrel. But acacia wood also, what the wonders of it is that it just elevates the fruit that you naturally get in a Sauvignon Blanc. It's just like it amplifies that, and that's why we've got such pronounced tropical pineapple fruit aromas on the Sauvignon Blanc. So it's really showy in terms of its fruit, and the richness and texture also comes from just that little bit of acacia wood. So in our estate blend now, we've taken this learning. So we're not using a higher percentage of wood. We're just using a higher percentage of these barrels that are custom made for us. And the deal is we can continue to get them on the condition that we don't tell any other winemakers about it, because these guys don't want to go through the pain of making them. Because these woods, the French oak is much harder than the acacia wood. So when they fit these barrels, they keep on popping the lids. So they've just created themselves a big nightmare by agreeing to make these for us. But yeah, we send them a few.
I think the cat might be out the bag now, Johan, possibly.
So everyone on this call is not allowed to talk about these barrels, but that's the secret behind this wine, and obviously what you see in our estate range as well. But this wine in this bottle is 100% from this barrel. So it's only one barrel that we've bottled just to share with you.
Are these the barrels you're using now throughout the estate range as well, Johan? Did I understand that correctly?
It would,
a portion of them.
Of the roughly 50% of our estate range that goes into barrel, of that 50%, I would guess 2/3 of that would be these acacia wood barrels. It's a big percentage of it. Still learning how much we need, but it's definitely made. And that's the beauty of these wines, is how they lift the quality of our estate range as well. Okay, so next up, shall we look at let's see if there's any questions on this wine first before we move on. Are these areas of vineyard dedicated? So Terry, no, there's not specific areas dedicated. We might identify 1 or 2 vines that we feel like with these vines that we've identified on the southern slopes of the property, is that it's really racy and tight, and we want more creaminess and fruit lift, where our Sauvignons, for instance, on the northern slopes, we don't have that problem because they're on clay soils, richer soils, so they automatically give more richness, more expressive fruit. They don't age that long as the ones on the southern slopes. But so I guess to a certain extent we identify sites, but it's not specific vineyards. But whatever gets bottled is always from one vineyard. Have you considered making a Pinot Noir for Vinography? Time will tell. You'll have to keep on joining these webinars to see. You never know. So it's not the same wines we release every year. It's not the same set of wines. It's in this particular release, it was a Sauvignon, a Chardonnay, Petit Verdot. Who knows what the next release is going to be, Terry, but you can be sure that I will keep in touch to keep you up to date on what they are. So that's part of the fun of it. It's not a commercial listing sitting on a supermarket shelf where we have to produce every single year the same wine. It's whatever is fun, interesting that we want to share with you that we do.
Terry, not even I know what Johan's busy with in the background there. So that's a secret.
There's lots of interesting stuff coming. Okay, let's take one more question. Sorry. Okay, there it's go. All right. Okay, I think let's pour some of the Chardonnay in the meanwhile.
Okay.
So I am mindful of everyone's time. I won't rush it, but it's going to be quicker from now onwards. So, should this wine be served chill, as with most white wines? Julie, I take it that you're referring to the Sauvignon still. Being a wooded Sauvignon, you can have it slightly warmer than you would have your fresh, crisp and fruity Sauvignon, which is nice at 10, 11 degrees. These probably at 12, 13, and you'll see once the wine warms up a little bit, you can already see it changing, but more on the chilled side than warmer. I would say. I hope that answers your question, but wooded whites in general, maybe 1 or 2 degrees warmer than your fresh, crisp white wines. Okay, next one up is the Chardonnay 2018, also a single vineyard, 350 something bottles. So again, tiny bottling on the Chardonnay, and let's taste the Chardonnay. Barry, your thoughts on the Chardonnay?
Oh, it's one of my favorite varieties. It's such a diverse variety. One of my questions to you, Johan, what style of Chardonnay are you actually after? And this is obviously going to be a great example of what you're striving for.
Yeah, you're quite right. The Vinography is almost something that we set ourselves out like this is where we want to be going. Obviously, we'll never make it and be 100% happy because it's a constant journey and learning process, and you always strive for better things. But to answer your question on style, what we get, and thank goodness the style I enjoy is similar in that it's more how can I call it, an old world or a classical style. It's more the struck match mineral peachy style of Chardonnay. It's not your voluptuous show of big oaky, buttery, glycerol rich Chardonnays. Our Chardonnays is much more refined. It's more on the citrus apple side of it, slightly lower alcohols. So if you want to compare it to anything or anywhere in the world, it's probably closer to a Burgundian style than it is to a Napa or an Australian style. As I've mentioned before, there's no such thing as a South African style because each area, each growing region being so different, all make different styles. But for me, and you'll see this if you taste our Chardonnays, the higher up you go in the pyramid, it's like the more refined, restrained they get, the more tighter they get. Where the estate, it's got a little bit of richness, oaky notes, creaminess. This one is even more tighter. You know, often people expect the higher you go up in the pyramid and price point, the more showy the wine should become. You'll see a similarity with many good producers across the world that the higher up in the pyramid you go, the tighter and more refined and more finessed the wines become. So higher prices doesn't always mean more wood, more alcohol, more fruit. That should be lower down. But that's just my take on it.
I think, Johan, for me, just that sort of thread that runs through all your wines with it, just that absolute purity of fruit and fantastic balance. And that really comes across strongly in the Chardonnay.
No, thanks. I think, what I touched on is that citrus zestiness, nice and like
creme brulee, a little bit of creme brulee almost coming through there.
Yeah, spot on. And that, like that biscuity, raw, nutty flavors. And on the palate, there's many layers coming through, but never any of that toasty, buttery, glycerol-y note. It's rich and layered, but it finishes dry and almost like a gravelly dryness on the palate that you get.
Yeah, I didn't look at the alcohols on these wines. Are they fairly low alcohol wines, these? Are they?
This one is
13%, yeah.
14% alcohol. So, but I mean, the secret of alcohol is that, like with anything in wines, is that it should be in balance. You know, you don't want that hotness or the burning feeling when you swallow these wines. So again, it's been in barrel as well, and I'm repeating myself, but our selection of barrels, and you'll remember it from previous webinars, are those that are water soaked, so it's very gentle. We want to showcase Benguela Cove, we want to showcase Chardonnay, not the barrel or what Johan and Michelle can do in the cellar. So, and I hope this is a good example of that. So what have we done with the Chardonnay? Let me share some slides with you. So Chardonnay, like with all our wines, it's been quite a journey. And on Terry's question on what's next, or will we see a Pinot, we changed them up, but Chardonnay is one of those that will be more often than not, and as much as possible, because it really showcases the journey we're on. So we started with Chardonnay, where in the past, and this goes for all the grapes, but we're just using Chardonnay as an example here, where everything will be blended together. We've started making the Chardonnays from different soil types separately to learn and to understand what is the effect of clay or slate or schist or granite on Chardonnay. So once we've learned that, we went one more step and we said, okay, so some Chardonnays have more than one clone on one, so let's use shale. We might have 2 clones of Chardonnay on shale. So let's identify how soil type interacts with different clones to understand that interaction. So what you see on the screen is not a Chardonnay bunch. It's just, I couldn't get nice examples of Chardonnay, but this is
Pinot Noir.
This is all Pinot Noir, but these are different clones of Pinot Noir, so they all have different numbers. So as I mentioned, different clones have different bunch sizes, different levels of acidity, slightly different flavors, and behave differently in the vineyard, so therefore the slightly different flavors. So we went and wanted to understand how does the different clones behave on different soils. So one of our earlier bottlings was single soil, single clone, the 2017. So we just shared, okay, this is what this clone on this soil looks like. And that happened to be the combination that we believe in and that we're going to pursue going forward on Benguela Cove. Then we went one more step and we said, okay, this soil, this clone into barrels from different coopers. How does those coopers and their house style of barrel influence the previous 2? Okay, so we've done one soil, one clone into different coopers, and from those different coopers, we took the wood that the barrel is made of from different origins or different forests in France. So this is a map of France. So we use predominantly French oak barrels at Benguela Cove, and not because we're trying to be fancy, just because it suits our style. So this is France, and these little circles are all different forests from where they source wood to make the barrels. So like with wine and vines, there's also such a thing as terroir, soils, climates, and when it comes to the trees they use for making barrels. So we took our Chardonnay juice, placed them into different coopers, and from those coopers, barrels made from different forests. So just to learn, how does forest type, cooper, soil, and clone align? So it's zooming in all the time and narrowing it down and customizing how we go about all our different vineyard parcels. So the 2018 is a bottling of what we've learned from aligning Cooper and Forest, the origin of the wood. So this is 100% from a forest called the Vosges, South African grapes, but the wood is from the Vosges forest in France. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with too much detail, but you can go on and you can say, okay, so let's say wood sourced from the Vosges forest in France. All those staves before they assemble the barrel are seasoned outside. So they are left 2 to 3 years outside for the rain to leach out all the tannins and all the negative things. And depending on where you season them, for how long and where, it also plays a role. So if you season these in Burgundy or in Bordeaux, again, 2 different wood types, 2 different barrels, 2 different wines. So next step is, where was this staves seasoned? So we have to figure that out. One more step, so once we've figured that out, is, okay, so now we've got 1 forest, 1 barrel seasoned in this way. There's hundreds of toasting levels that you can apply to a barrel, is to figure out what toasting method best complements Chardonnay or Cabernet or Merlot or Syrah from Benguela Cove. So that is why this is not done in 3 or 4 years. This is done in 50 to
in a lifetime, Johan, in your lifetime, and then still not.
So what we've done, and I warned you, this is going to be a little bit geeky, but bear with me. We're almost done. Is that what we've done this year is also to take the grape juice before we start fermentation. So what we do before we start the fermentation, grape juice would look like this one. It's got a lot of sediment and pieces of grape skin and flesh and everything. So when you leave it for about 24 hours to 48 hours, with gravity, all those solids settle to the bottom, and we just take off the clear juice from the top, and it will look something like this. So it's perfectly clear juice. So you can either ferment this clean juice, something with a little bit more solids, and like lots of solids in it. So we've gone and fermented different levels of clarity grape juice, fermented them just to see the effect that had, and it is, Barry, you won't believe the massive difference between these, just the clarity of the juice on the end product. So there's another variable we have to figure.
Just for my own interest, Johan, what did give the best result out of those 4?
So, I mean,
is that a hidden secret?
No, it's not. So, okay, I don't know how to go. Let's see if I can go back.
No, don't worry.
Oh, there we go. So, we've always fermented something like Sauvignon would sit here. It's cleaner, it's a cooler fermentation, so this works best. Chardonnay, I've always been here, and I've also tried some of this year, which is really risky. But because Chardonnay is a warmer fermentation in the barrel, you can get away with it. So I'm thinking, time will tell, that we'll probably go as 60-70% of this and 20-30% of this. It just gives a totally different component. Too much to bottle on its own, but it does bring some interest to the final blend. So it's again, 1 vineyard, 1 clone, 1 everything, but when it comes into the cellar, it goes into different avenues, and we try different things, and we can blend them together again. So it comes back to that 3.5 trillion components that you can.
Yeah.
What we've also done, so it was those clarity, we've taken another batch, same juice, and we've inoculated it. I think it was 8 different yeast strains, just to see what yeast strain is best aligned with what we do in Benguela Cove. None of what I've mentioned here is common practice. As I said, we just like to really play around and experiment, and the more I learn and discover, the more nervous I get, because then I just realize there's so much more to be learned and stuff that I don't know. So I'm just like this snowball effect that we're on. Then there's one more thing you might have heard about, malolactic fermentation. That's a secondary process. So it's not something that was done in the 2018. We've done some this year, some without, and some we did allow to go through a secondary fermentation. Completely changes the wine. I'm of the belief not for the better, but we've did a little bit anyway, just to see what happens should we allow this secondary fermentation, which is quite a common practice in Chardonnay production. But kind of, for me, you just lose your sense of place, and the wine becomes quite generic, and it can be from anywhere in the world, and you lose its sense of place, because it just changes the wine so much. And then you can go on to what method of pressing do you use? Do you use the same way as we did for a Sauvignon Blanc, keep all the oxygen out, and it's nice, fresh and green juice? We just went and said, but hang on, back in the days, years ago, centuries ago, they didn't have all the technology we have today. What did they do back then? So we went and we allowed oxygen in, we used open processes, we deliberately oxidized the juice. Look at how it looked like almost like coffee going through the pipes, and made wine like they did back in the days. And super, super interesting how the results have came out. And in fact, I think going forward, we might be making more of this, what they call a black Chardonnay style. Just the wine doesn't end up looking like this. The wine after fermentation still has a green tinge to it again. So not to be worried about future Chardonnays. And then I'm not even gonna go there. If you really want to get all complicated about it, then you can still right at the end decide, do you want to put a screw cap, a cork, or what sort of closure on it? Because that again changes the wine with time in bottle and with aging. So just to give you an idea of all the things we're working on, the idea is that of everything we do every year, you can't do all at once. You have to take the learning, move on. But the idea is that every 1 year, one of your darts should hit a bullseye. So there's one thing you can learn and take forward to next year. Next season, you learn one more thing, one more bullseye, and you move on. As it works, Barry, and you know this better than I do, is that we're dealing with Mother Nature. So no 2 years are the same. So what's worked the previous year or the previous 2 or 3 years wouldn't necessarily work this year. So 2019 was one of those years where we did what we wanted to do and what we've previously done, and we had some new ideas how to move forward. Totally different season, different growing conditions, and the end result wasn't that wow or that mind-blowing that we thought it justified a Vinography release. So that kind of also happens. So you have to take a step back, go back to the drawing board, reevaluate what you've done, because you can't just follow recipes. You also have to keep in mind the set of cards that Mother Nature deal you and work around that as well. So unfortunately, no 2019 Chardonnay for the Vinography, but the 2020 is one to look out for. So it doesn't always come off. Sometimes the results are not well, but as long as they're not disastrous. But you know, it's some years you learn something, some years not. But what I'm just trying to say is, we don't have full control in the winery or in the vineyard. It's still up to Mother Nature as to what we can or can't achieve with these wines. Okay, ready for the next one?
I think we are.
Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay.
How are we doing for time? No idea, I'm enjoying myself.
The next one.
I've left mine in the carton, Johan, so I thought I'd just unpack it for our viewers.
Sure.
For those of you that haven't seen it, it comes in a beautiful single pack like this. And opening that up, can you see? You get a little certificate of authenticity. So we can see here, this is bottle 133 out of 645.
You just need that closer to your screen, Barry.
Sorry, can you see now? Oh, there we go. That's better.
Yeah.
Okay, got the vintage 2017. And unpacking a little bit further, each bottle is beautifully wrapped. We unwrap that. Even the wrapping, Johan, you guys have put detail in. You know, I see you've decided on a beautiful purple wax for the top of the Petit Verdot. You guys see that?
Yeah. So all of those
really beautiful packaging, and we've had what we're busy with at the moment is we doing quite a lot of gifting with these wines. So I put a personal little card in each box. I've got a few clients who are in they're lawyers and so on, and they've been sending them out to their different clients, and I write a little personal note and we send them out as gifts. So yeah, for our viewers that are interested in that, just give Emma or myself a call. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, Johan, the big thing about these wines is they're pretty much only available from the two estates, from either Benguela or Mannings or Leonard's Lee, or through our wine club. And I think I do know a lot of our viewers today are wine club members. For those that aren't, I mean, it's just a no-brainer to join our wine club. You get to meet us, get to meet Johan, do personalized tastings. You get a good 20% off all your wines that you buy. And every quarter we send you a selection of wines which have been personally selected by Johan. And in those are wines like Vinography and the Catalina, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and new releases that no one else can really get their hands on at the time.
Yeah, so some new releases, and I'm also busy building up a library of older vintages that aren't available for sale anymore, but we're keeping enough stock back for our wine club members so they get to see those wines in 5 or 8 or 10 years time from now, get to revisit them, which I think is quite interesting. And it's always when we assemble those selections and there's a odd vinography or something special in there, that's the idea of these, is to spoil you guys with some of them.
And I think, Johan, for our UK, wine club members, it's also going to be really exciting because they'll be part of the journey of our vineyard in the UK, and our new brand that we plan to launch later this year.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. We looking forward to that journey big time. Time is creeping up on us. It's soon.
It is. I was in the vineyard this morning, and we're ready at pea size, so the grapes are coming on quickly. I'm starting to think about harvest. We need to start planning, you and I. we need to have a few chats, Johan.
Yeah.
We were just saying in an earlier conversation, at the moment it looks as if Johan might not even be able to get across to the UK, as all flights are grounded in SA. So we might be the first winery to have a virtual wine making going on. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, let's leave it there.
Well, that's another discussion.
So just having an eye on the questions. Giles was asking how long the Sauvignon was in barrel. Giles, you didn't miss it. I don't think I mentioned it. Sauvignon was in barrels 9 months, and the Chardonnay was close to what was that, 11 months that it spent in barrel. Both these wines, the Chardonnay and the Sauvignon, both 100% new oak barrels, but again, just because of the way we select our barrels, you don't see the oak. The oak is just the finishing touch or the makeup. It's not about the oak. It's just the frame of the wine. The picture inside is about the property, the grape. The oak just really finishes everything off without really seeing the oak in the wine. All right, let's go on to if everyone is ready, the Petit Verdot. So I'm not sure how much of you have heard of Petit Verdot as a grape varietal before. If you have not heard of it, not to worry, because it is very, very, very seldom bottled as a single varietal wine. most commonly grown or used to be grown in Bordeaux, and it's always or mostly part of the Bordeaux blends. Petit Verdot is known for lots of color, lots of tannin, lots of acidity, and therefore it makes it quite a challenging grape to bottle on its own, because it's as I said, it can be acidic, tannic, often lacks fruit. So on its own, quite a difficult wine and not always an enjoyable wine, but in blends, it does absolute magic, even in small percentages. So if you're still enjoying that Chardonnay, or you've bought your the Petit, and while we allow it to just to open up a bit, let me just quickly tell you a little bit about the Petit Verdot, while you're giving that glass a bit of air. So Petit, small, maybe in berry size, but definitely not when it comes to the power and the punch of these wines. As I said, just about big in everything, and I think maybe an example of dynamite comes in small packages, or small berries in this case. So what we've done with our Petit Verdot, and again, this is Petit Verdot telling the story, but we've done it with everything across the property. When we started out late 2016, you know, completing the cellar in time for 2017 vintage, you know, really bringing everything in-house and being adamant to take things to a new level. So part of pulling out all the stops as far as quality goes was not only the cellar and what we do at the back of me, but also what goes into the vineyard. There's an age-old saying, and I'm sure Barry will agree to this, that the wine, or good wine, is made in the vineyard. And I'll be the first winemaker to admit to that. So a lot of work went into what's happening in our vineyards as well. So the image you're seeing here, you might see this little vineyard rose here. So it's just layered by an infrared image, and that just measures every single vine in that row. It measures the chlorophyll content in the vines. So basically, it just means how much vigor or growth is in those vines. So from this photo, you can clearly see that this green section is almost like a vineyard on its own, compared to the yellow and orange sections. So this is an aerial shot of that same vineyard, this first section. And what the eye meets is you can't see a difference at all. It's only once you start looking at these images that you realize, but hang on, there's a difference in this vineyard. And this images like this allows you to really zoom into your blocks, even though all of this is on one soil type, so it's not as a function of soil. And if you go and measure the sugar levels or the ripeness levels on these different sections, you'll see that they are very different. So what was done in the past is we would have picked all of this as one vineyard, because it all looks like the same thing. We can't see anything wrong with it. But now zooming in, we'll treat these as two different vineyards, different irrigation, different everything, and different pickings as well. So that was already one step of improving our wines, a massive deal. The second step was installing these moisture measurement equipment. So I'm not going to, there's various types of them and ways to do it. But Petit Verdot, and Barry, you might need to tell us a little bit about your experience with Petit Verdot in a bit. But Petit Verdot gives you this signal, and you can see from this image the leaves on the Petit vine. It tells you this sad story like, help me, I'm struggling, save me, and you feel sorry for it, and you give it a bit of water just so it can brighten up. But it's actually telling a false story, and we couldn't kind of really figure out the vines are struggling, but looked like they were struggling, but we kept on giving it water, but it just kept on giving more and more grapes. And the end result of the more and more grapes and all the water is that the wines didn't really have concentration and enough depth in them. Until we started measuring what happens inside the vines and under the soil in terms of the moisture content, we said, wait a bit, what it's telling us and what happens inside the vine or down at the roots are two different stories. So we started going more on what the moisture measurement was than what's going on top, and doing different trials of using a combination of the two, ignoring what we see. And that also had a big impact on our Petit Verdot quality in the cellar. I don't know, Barry, is that your experience of Petit Verdot also being quite a difficult grape to grow, or what was your experience?
Absolutely, Johan. In my previous property, we only had a block of around 2 hectares. And it's one of those grapes that is certainly, the wine is made in the vineyard, as you said previously. It's a variety that loves to overcrop. So if you're not controlling crop carefully, watching water, and again, planting it on the right site. I think a lot of Petit Verdot has been planted in areas where you don't get that optimal ripening, especially around the world. I think, if you planted Petit Verdot here, it would be an absolute disaster. Petit Verdot is always the last grape we harvested in South Africa. So, I always knew that was the one block that always was waiting for the optimal ripeness to happen once the Petit's off, harvest ends. So you can imagine planting something like that in the UK certainly would not work. So yeah, agreed, Johan. That is good viticulture, and it's a vine that always looks like it's almost on its way out, as if it's dying. And as a viticulturist, we love to make everything look beautiful and add water and nutrients and so on. And you spot on. It's managing that block and every little section of it, and not reacting to what you see on the top, but knowing what's going on under the ground.
I think that's been its downfall to a large extent in many parts of the world, is that first of all, it's difficult to grow. It's a difficult wine on its own. And then the fact that it's so late, and that a lot of parts of the world, people couldn't get it to ripen. And let's be honest, I don't think a lot of people have the patience to wait, because they want to get the harvest over and done with,
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
But definitely in South Africa nowadays, and also in parts like Bordeaux, it's getting more and more into favor. And in South Africa, we've got big plantings of Petit Verdot just because it suits our climate so well. It is late, but we've got enough sunshine to ripen it and to get it off the vines, as long as you can manage those crop levels. But Petit Verdot these days are gaining a lot of favor in South Africa, and I hope this wine is a good example of why it's becoming more popular. Obviously, as a standalone wine, it doesn't have the brand. It's not as big a brand as Cabernet or Merlot or Syrah or Pinot Noir yet. So people aren't that keen on buying something they don't know. But I think from what you see in the glass, I mean, why not? So, but let's carry on. So, so we did all these trials in the vineyard, which has been lifting our quality year on year on year. As I said, in the cellar, we try our very best to also improve on what we've already done in the vineyard. You'll remember from previous slides, I said that let's say that parcel of Petit Verdot comes to the winery. Now we can put it in all these various vessel types that we've installed in the winery. All these vessel types have a slightly different end result to them. Those that open to the top got more grapes that you can extract those tannin and color from. So bigger wines that you'll get from something like these ones that are closed towards the top, and less berries that are exposed to the juice we're pumping over, so softer, more gentle wines. So you've guessed it, something like Petit Verdot, we go into these tanks that are close towards the top, because Petit by itself already has loads and loads of tannin, so we don't need to extract or work even more. We've discussed last time, there's two methods. It's either submerging those skins by punching them down with this punch down arm, or doing pump overs. In the case of Petit Verdot, we do pump overs. It's just a little bit more gentler, but also on the process that we follow by using what we call whole berries that pump over is just a better process because it doesn't break the berries or squash the berries with the punch down effect. So with red wine making, we crush them. So we put them through this piece of machine, which is 2 rollers, which is about half the size of the berry itself. So as the berry passes through, it crushes the berry open, which allows the juice to come out, but it also tears open the skin, which allows the color and the tannins to get into the juice and eventually the wine. With the Petit Verdot, remember I said it's got lots of color, lots of tannin, lots of acidity. So we were thinking, if it's already got a lot of all of that, and too much actually, what is the point then of opening those berries to get even more? Isn't that the wine's enemy? So we decided, let's remove this piece of equipment and only put those whole berries into the fermentation. So what we've got in the tank is, I don't know, thousands, millions of these solid berries. And we've got like mini fermentation in all of these berries happening. So eventually with the fermentation, the skin and the cell walls become soluble and they burst open, and what the juice inside gets released, or at the moment, at the end of the process, when we press them, we will squash them and get the wine out of the berries. But by having all these mini fermentations inside the berries, it's almost like a process which they call carbonic maceration. You get much more fruit flavor. So Petit Verdot, one of its downfalls, it doesn't have a lot of fruity flavors. But by doing this process, poof, all of a sudden we've got so much more fruit flavors just by doing this whole berry fermentation. But in the same go, by not opening or crushing these skins, we don't allow all those color and tannins to come into the wine, which is also one of Petit Verdot's challenges. So by keeping these whole berries, we've now gone and addressed 2 things. We've upped the fruit and we've lowered the tannin content in the wine. Color is not a problem in Petit Verdot ever. It goes pitch black straight away. So we weren't concerned about not opening or tearing up that skin. So what you're tasting here is that exact experiment of doing those whole berries. So in this wine, you have, unlike most Petit Verdots you will try, you've got beautiful fruit. It's almost like Turkish delight, violets, a little bit of rose petals, and quite perfumey, a little bit of hints of almost like a peppery note that's now come with a bit of age in bottle. And which is kind of unlike for a Petit Verdot. It's just because of the process that we get all these perfumey, fresh, aromatic notes, and we just liked the end result so much that we decided now we have to share this with everyone. And ever since 2017, this is the way we've been making Petit Verdot. So I'll get to the palate in a bit, but why would one bother trying to make Petit Verdot on its own when it's a blender? It's used for blends all over the world. So my take or my philosophy on blends is that, and we've discussed this before, that whatever this wine is lacking, you can substitute by blending another one, and then the 2 of these are lacking something and you're blending something else. So I've never been a believer of blending to fill in what some other wines are lacking or to fill their gaps. I've always been of the belief that I want to make, even though I know I'm going to make a blend, I want to make each and every single component, be it the Cabernet, the Merlot, the Petit, the Malbec, as good a wine as possible on their own, because I don't want to fill in the gaps or shortcomings of the other ones and that be the reason for blending. I want great wines, standalone wines on their own, and just build on their strengths they already have. I'm just of the belief that following that approach, you get a better result than trying to fill in gaps and holes. I don't believe you get the same quality by doing that. So therefore, we're adamant to master each component, each wine on its own, even though they're going into blending. So that is why we were looking to address the challenges we have in Petit as a standalone wine, and just feel that makes it then a better blender in the bigger component. So it's about striking balance between acidity, sugar, tannins, the alcohol, and making Petit on its own a standalone wine. As I said, used in blends all over the show, Petit Verdot, and many wines in many cellars. Barry, you'll know it's got a little drop or two of Petit Verdot because it just does magic to those wines. But we've decided, no, it's always the bridesmaid, never the bride. You know, it's always somewhere in there, but it never gets the limelight. So we've made it the bride this time around. So I hope you enjoy it, and it's quite. As I said, because of that whole berry fermentation, you don't get that astringent, tough tannins. It's quite silky and soft, and again, quite like a strawberry fruit palate to it.
Johan, you certainly have mastered this variety. This is a stunning example of Petit Verdot. Loads packed with dark and red fruit. Interesting enough, one of the first wines I ever made was a Petit Verdot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have to confess, it was nothing like this.
It's got a little bit of a soft spot for you, at least.
It does. It's always been there, and it's always been. That's actually why I decided to use it as one of the first wines I ever made. It's a hugely challenging grape, but I've just learned a lot of lessons from you tonight, and yeah, brilliant example. And I'm going to be enjoying a lot of bottles of this going forward.
Yeah, it's something unique. It's something different. It's always fun tasting this with people and telling them about the grape, and just seeing something like this. There's not a lot of Petits, as I said, being made because of all the challenges, but then you get something like this, which is just effortless and seamless. And I'm just saying, why not more of these? It's like iron fist in a velvet glove would be my best way to describe this one. It's got so much power and punch, but then it's got this beautiful elegance to it. So I hope this kind of explains a little bit of the thinking behind the Vinography wines and what we're doing. As the slide shows you, it's a journey, it's a ride, and we don't know where it's going to end or where it's taking us, but we're having a hell of a lot of fun in the process while doing it. And please join us. You're welcome. The idea behind this is taking you on the journey with us and sharing with you what we're doing and what we're learning. So be a part of it, and join us and talk to Barry, talk to Emma, and make sure you get some of these Petit Verdots, and look out for the annual releases. We'll communicate them to you. Good news is that the Catalinas, Barry, are on their way. So some of you are familiar with Catalina, which is our flagship wine. We just released it 2018, and your allocation is on its way.
I think we've got 60 bottles on their way, which
unfortunately, like with the Vinographies, it's limited. It's all on allocation. The last year's Vinography globally sold out in a little bit more than 48 hours. Obviously, we keep you your allocation, but they're on their way. Some of you already took up your allocation, so if you have an allocation series of numbers, that's yours for life. Most of you, from what I've checked last time, have renewed your allocation, so they remain yours, so not to worry. But there might be a few spares or extras, and who knows, maybe next time when I'm over, I'll bring a couple of bottles for us to taste, so you don't have to open your own, so we can all get to taste the 2018, maybe not on a webinar, but there where Barry is sitting right now. I reckon that will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that'll be fantastic. I think you and I have done a lot of tastings in this new format, and it'll be brilliant to see you in person again and really enjoy those wines with all our amazing viewers and clients that we've developed across the UK.
Yeah, no, I said we're still looking to see how this whole harvest thing is going to play out, but yeah, time will tell. There's another question, Terry, asking all these questions, the right question. He's putting me on the spot. He was asking about Pinot Noir, and now he's asking, is there Cabernet Franc on Benguela?
Ah, I know there is a little block of Cabernet Franc there.
Terry's been here before. I don't know what he was looking around. Well, I wasn't looking, but it looks like he's got some inside info on what might feature in Vinography soon. So Terry,
Brilliant.
keep on watching this space. Okay, I think, let's see, there's one last question. There is, I think we've addressed Petit Verdot. No, it's not bottled a lot. Really, maybe I think 5, 6 South African wineries giving it a go, but as I said, quite tough, a lot of work. The Australians have been doing quite well with Petit Verdot. I think they probably the country across the world that's doing the most single varietal Petit Verdots, but still not a lot. What other wines in the Vinography range? Time will tell.
Watch the space.
And yeah, then there is, am I right in saying this is quite an exclusive? Yes, I mean it is a limited bottling. It ranges between 300 to 700 bottles a year, and that's why Barry also mentioned by signing up to the wine club or visiting the properties. And it's available online, right, Barry, as well?
It is, yes, it is.
It's available directly, but it's definitely not in trade for the simple reason that we want to keep it small, exclusive, and share it to those close to us. And with these types of volumes, we can't go national or on retail or anything. So this is just our little hobby. So glad to have the opportunity to share it with you, all of you tonight. Thanks for joining. We went way over time, but I can spend another hour and a half on these, but I won't. So please comment, please send your messages, send me an email. I've been receiving lots of emails from people. Those are great. Keep them coming. Love the comments, love the questions, the feedback. More than happy to get back to you all on that.
Yeah,
Thanks,
just
Barry.
from our side, as always, we love spending time with you and listening to all your insight into the amazing wines you're producing. So yeah, thanks. Until next time.
Thanks for joining.
Yes.
Enjoy those wines. Bye-bye.
I will.